Yes. Say it a million times, then say it a million more, and the word you will have said 2 million times is yes. Now, that, if you don't know, was a statement that was made by the character Terence Bunley in the film Yes Man. Now, I don't know if you do this, but whenever anyone seems to pass away or die, celebrity-wise, my wife and I always grab the phones out and play a game. And not just when they die, but if we're looking at a celebrity on TV and we're like, oh, how old are they? And we play the guessing game, how old they were. And it just brought me back, because Terence Stamp recently passed away, which is really sad, and he was a great actor. But it brought me back to looking at the film Yes Man, and it just reminded me that so much about that film I loved, and I love Jim Carrey as an actor, but so much about that film I hated. Now, Jim Carrey was a character called Carl Allen. Now, Carl Allen, until he sort of enrolled in a personal development program, he was just a regular guy, pretty much just bimbling along, in and out of relationships, not really getting anywhere with his career. And the simple answer was he went to this event where they taught him all about saying yes and power of saying yes. Now, the moral of this film is basically, if you're not careful, that you can just get so kind of, what's the phrase? You can get so kind of het up in the kind of saying no that you close so many doors and opportunities. And so saying yes is actually going to change so much, in your life. Now, that was kind of pretty true for Carl Allen, who's the character that Jim Carrey plays. But the problem is he said yes to a lot of other stuff as well that kind of went a bit wrong. So he was a financial controller or in a bank, and he was saying yes to people's finances. So he was saying yes to all of the investments and people who wanted finance and loans, which was weird because it actually got him a promotion, but actually the knock-on effect of all the other crazy stuff that was kind of going on in the background. His next door neighbor was a little old lady, which is quite funny. I was just thinking, in Jim Carrey's films, he always has a little old lady, if you know, that's from Dumb and Dumber. But he helps her out because she asks him. He says yes because he's meant to say yes, and she hasn't got any money, so she can't pay him. So the only way she pays him is in kind. Pretty gross. But yeah, he says yes because that's the power of yes, right? Now, he ends up going to, I think he ends up going to a bar and he meets a girl and he has an amazing relationship with her, and he goes running with taking photos and goes on nights out, drinks way too much Red Bull, and it's all a little bit crazy. Now, the film itself is actually pretty funny. It's Jim Carrey. But it got me thinking, when I was younger, probably, and I was just thinking about this before I hit record today, I must have been about 22 years old, so exactly half my life ago. I went for some jobs in the motor trade as a car salesman. Now, I used to want to get into sales. At the time, I think I was working in the surf shop, and I wanted to just try and find a way to get into sales. The one thing that really annoyed me was the fact that no one would employ me because I didn't have any sales experience. So I ended up going and getting a job, working as a valeter, and kind of working my way up to the point I started selling cars. And then I moved from that job into a main dealer. But when I went to go towards a main dealer, people always said to me, with regards to the interviews and stuff, be prepared for strange questions. And they'll always ask you kind of quite random questions. But one question that stuck out for me, and I swear to God that this question has got me every job I've ever gone for. And the last time I was employed was back in, oh my God, probably 2008, something like that, maybe. And that question was, do you have any weaknesses? They always ask you what your strengths are, but they always used to ask, what are your weaknesses? Have you got any weaknesses? Now, this is fine because I was prepared. And my answer that I was ready to answer for this question was, I do actually have a bit of a weakness. One of my weaknesses, I actually really struggle to say no. I love to take on new challenges. I've always loved to kind of, be part of the team. So, I'm always up for getting involved, doing stuff, helping to grow. If, there's opportunities to learn, then, I'm definitely, I'm a yes man. Now, you're probably thinking a bit like Jim Carrey, I wonder where this goes wrong. So over the years of working in the motor trade, I would say yes when the delivery would turn up and I'd go out and be part of the team. What I noticed was I was the guy that said yes whilst other people were staying in the showroom. I had a situation once where I handed over one of my colleagues' cars to one of their clients on their day off. And because I said yes, one, missed out on some customers who'd come in to buy a car, and one of my colleagues then sold that person a car. I also sold that person who I was handing over the car to gap insurance. So if you don't know what gap insurance, I'm not FSA accredited, so just go with I'm telling you what it is. I'm not advising before you get too critical on me. Gap insurance is where you have your car written off, stolen, and the gap insurance pays the difference between what you paid for the car and what your insurance company pays for the car. So if the insurance company gave you 15 grand on insurance payout and you paid 20 grand, the gap insurance would pay you the 5 grand difference. So I sell this to my colleague's customer when they come in thinking, oh, cool, I've made some commission for myself. Nope, because I helped him out and it was his customer, I actually didn't make a penny because he had claimed that he'd already sort of laid the foundations with that. And I thought, hang on a minute. I've said yes to help someone and it's bitten me in the ass. I've missed out on a sale and I'm not even getting commission for the gap insurance as well. Further on in my career, in my own business, I learned very rapidly that when you say yes to someone for a job, now, for example, if we said it was Thursday and I get an email from a client that says, are you available on Tuesday? I would say, if I was available, yes. Now, the problem with saying yes so quickly is the fact that two things here have instantly caused me issues. One, within that time frame, the client hasn't paid their deposit because there's just not enough time for that to get processed. Secondly, you will find that when you say yes to something that's last minute, it can either be a catastrophic headfuck or it can be absolutely phenomenal and the best thing you've ever done. 99% of the time, it will be a catastrophic headfuck because, one, it's last minute, two, it's unorganized, so there'll be a very poor brief, no doubt. And then 9 times out of 10, when you actually get to the job, you realize that actually it could have been done later in the week or the following week. When you get anything in your life where you're kind of exploring these questions where someone says, are you available or something like that, I want you to actually think about it, because this was my biggest weakness. Saying no was my biggest weakness, but actually saying yes became my biggest weakness. Now, saying yes to everything didn't get me where I wanted to be, and I had to make a mental shift to get to where I was. Not to mention, actually, going back to the motor trade, when I was in the motor trade, I was actually called in the office one day because I wasn't selling enough cars. But when you looked at all the delivery notes, they all had my name on it. Or you looked at when the cars had all been moved around on the forecourt, it was me that was doing it. So it was those kind of moments for me that I realized that actually, yes, it's good to be a team player. And two, there were some lazy bastards in that industry. But for me, the knock-on effect was actually, it was affecting me. So there's a couple of things I want you to think about. And that is, when someone asks you about, are you available? Can you do this or can you do that? You need to stop and pause. And a question that I always ask myself, and quite often I'll grab my phone out because I'll just grab my phone out to look at it as almost as prop as a bit of a reminder, is saying yes or no to this going to move me further forward in life? Or is this going to cost me my time, my energy, my money? Now, a big one for me is this going to have a knock-on effect to my family life? So, for example, if you're doing something that's like late at night, which means when you wake up the following morning and you're shattered, does that mean you're not going to spend time with your family or your loved ones over the weekend? And again, it's likewise the same with people who are going out and getting coked off their head or drinking every weekend. The knock-on effect is actually Sunday morning they feel like shit and they're not spending time with their loved ones. So actually, do they need to keep these boundaries from these situations? Sometimes things are great. You want to go and have an amazing time. That's fine. I'm not condoning getting coked off your head and drinking on the weekend. I haven't drunk for like 3 or 4 years. But what I want you to just think about is, what's the knock-on effect of this? If it's a positive knock-on effect, great. And it's okay to turn around and say, no, I'm not doing it. Also, when it comes to saying yes to some things as well, the thing is, you can also get like quite burnt out from just saying yes all the time. You can get resentment. You can have like a scattered focus. And to be fair, and I can prove this from previous things I've done, that when I've said yes to something, I'm not really in it because it's not really for me. I've turned up and not been my true self. I've given mediocre results and probably lost opportunities with people in the process as well. People pleasing is not genuine helpfulness. So saying no to everything means saying yes to nothing that matters. Boundaries aren't walls. They're the gates with you as like the gatekeeper. So like, imagine you are the caretaker or rattling those keys in Harry Potter. You are the person in control. And the problem is with these as well is that when you think about boundaries, like if you think about a boundary, it's kind of like a riverbank, right? And I know this is going to be a very cheesy example, but like if you took away the riverbanks, then the river just pisses around all over the place. The towns are flooded, everything goes to complete chaos. Whereas when there's like strong foundations, strong boundaries, the river flows, that comes in, comes out, and it all works well. Don't get me wrong. It's okay to let a little bit of water out every now and again to break some rules, but you've got to think about what that little thing could do or what the damage that could cause, especially when it comes to your business and your family life. So when I stopped saying yes to everyone, I noticed a massive thing, especially when it came to social events. One, because as I said earlier, I'm not a drinker, but suddenly I had the energy for the friendships that actually matter. And you'd be surprised at who you like to spend time with and enjoy spending time with because of those boundaries, and the relationships are just so much stronger. It's really important that you know what you stand for. So when you say no, you're saying no because it doesn't align with your purpose, your passion, your future. I stopped working after 4 p.m. I've done this for the majority of this year. So from 4 p.m. onwards, it means that I'm present when my daughter comes home from school. I'm present at dinner time. I'm available to myself and my family, which means if I want to go for a surf or do something with the family after 4 p.m., I can do those things. That protects my energy. It also means that when I go to bed, I'm not full of work fuzz. And also in the morning, I also set a morning boundary as well. So that morning boundary is no social media before 8:30 in the morning. And I've got that locked on my phone so that when it comes to like breakfast, I'm not sat there looking at my phone. So it's these simple boundaries for me. Time is really precious. So focus on that area. And that then gives me so much more freedom to be present with my loved ones, present for myself, present for my wife, present for the dogs as well. Because I haven't even noticed that when I'm tired and when I'm grumpy and when I'm grouchy, because I've overdone stuff and I'm said yes to everything like I have in the past, the first people to miss out is the dogs because they miss out on the dog walk. So I created a simple rule that if it doesn't align with my 3 main goals this year, it's an automatic fuck off. Positive outcome for this was when I stopped overcommitting, people started respecting my time more, not less. My relationships got deeper because I was more present instead of constantly thinking about my next obligation. my next deadline. So here's the thing. If I was asked in an interview now what my weakness is, I would have to say, I used to say yes to everything, thinking it made me valuable. But I've learned that being selective about my commitments, what I'm doing, actually makes me more effective. I'm still someone who gives their all to what they commit. But I now make sure those commitments align with my purpose, my passion, my actions, and my goals. And they don't affect how I'm present with my loved ones. So that's it for today. And next time someone says to you something, just think of this. Pause, think, then answer. Don't say yes, don't say no. If it aligns with your purpose, your passion, your action, your goals, go for it. If it doesn't, fuck it. See you next time.
And that wraps up today's episode of the Coffee, Chaos and Confidence podcast with me, Coach Casey. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you like and subscribe. It helps other listeners find the show. Also, go and check out the show notes to learn more about my incredible guests. Until next time, make sure you chase your dreams without limitations.